You'd almost have to have a personal beef with Razer at this point to not feel a different energy coming off them through the end of 2019 and into 2020. You certainly can't say they're not listening. So they're back with one of the most popular mouse shapes ever. This is the return of the DeathAdder with the brand new 2020 feel with all the new tech inside that we've seen on a lot of their recent mice. And they've also released the Basilisk V2, which fills probably the only void in that entire lineup. We're gonna check them both out. You ready? Let's go! Yo, I'm Brian P. You're watching Bad Seed Tech, and today we're checking out the DeathAdder and the Basilisk V2 gaming mice from Razer. Starting with the DeathAdder V2, we have the latest in a lineage here, and by that I mean the DeathAdder has seen over 30 variants and sold over 10 million copies worldwide since its inception. To say it's a popular shape would be a gross understatement of its pedigree. We've got a retail price of $69.99 in that classic DeathAdder right-hand ergo shape. We see a reduction in weight here from the previous DeathAdder Elite, so we're going from around 100 grams to about 82 grams on my scale. It's definitely noticeable in hand. No holes and no apparent reduction in the strength of the frame. The thumb side panel is actually stronger than the Elite. The overall shape and dimensions have not changed. Still with the wide front flare and comfort grooves, still with the pretty pronounced hump, though the coating does appear to be a little different. Still matte, but with a little more texture. The intention here to make it a little bit more sweat resistant. There is a bit of post travel on the front triggers if I'm really nitpicking, but it doesn't bother me in game on either trigger. Dimensions are approximately 128 millimeters long, 70 at the front flare, 69 at the rear, and 63 at the grip, with a height of 43 millimeters. So it's still one of the larger mice out there, and it's definitely intended for medium to large size hands and palm or claw grip. The only real functional change to the frame is the DPI up and down buttons are still located on top, but they're recessed and they require a bit more deliberate action to trigger. Switches are now Razer's optical switches that we've seen in the Viper and the Basilisk mice. They are what they are. They're very fast, they should prove to be durable long term, but they do lack that slightly crispier, high-pitched click that we've seen in Switches past. For those curious, I do still main the Viper Ultimate for gaming and the Basilisk Ultimate for everything else. They both get a massive workout on a daily basis. I've had no issues with either. If you're someone who had a tough time with the smaller, more recessed side buttons of the Viper, you'll be pleased to see that we have the classic enormous side buttons here. You can hit these from any angle with literally any grip you like. These are very crispy, put up a decent amount of resistance, and demonstrate only minimal pre-travel that doesn't prove to be an issue in game at all. The side panels feature that smaller rubberized textured area that we saw in the Elite, but they've been revised here slightly as well for durability. So they're no longer a separate panel, but are actually part of the mold now. It's like they're the entire side panel, but only a part of its texture, and it's actually part of the frame as opposed to being a glued on piece like you've seen in some mice, so they should be a lot more durable long term. Subtle but important differences to the scroll wheel. The texture on the rubber is different, it requires a pretty decent force to depress, and the tactility is bordering on what we'd see from like a Zowie mouse. So it has that same sound as well, but not to the same degree as a Zowie. I've never been a CSGO player, but it's my understanding that this is an intentional design for bunny hopping. Inside, we've seen an upgrade to the Focus Plus 20K sensors, so we've got the combined tech of smart tracking, asymmetric cutoff, and motion sync. I covered those technologies in the Viper Ultimate review, but what you need to know is it's basically 3 technologies that sit in the firmware behind the sensor that help the mouse report the cursor position to the computer faster and also offers more accurate tracking. So they say. In reality, it's pretty solid. You also get storage for 5 profiles on the mouse that stores all your key bindings, your DPI settings, and basic lighting function. You do still have access to Synapse 3, which again has come a very long way and does allow for a guest login if you don't want to create an account, but you don't even have to leave that software installed if you don't want to once your mouse is set up the way you like. Cable here is their SpeedFlex cable, and while it's not the most flexible option out there versus like the G-Wolves or the MM710, it's still a solid paracord-like option, and it's worlds better than the DeathAdder Elite. So despite the larger frame and the fact that I've been maining mice even lighter and smaller, this felt like riding a bike. I've just spent so much time with the DeathAdder over the years that it felt really familiar. I still had a tendency to try to fingertip it, but the hump hits me right behind the first knuckle, so it almost always turned into a claw grip naturally. Nonetheless, I still found it very agile for flicks and very stable for tracking, Personally, I'm too spoiled by the Viper Ultimate to main this mouse, even with my larger hands, but if you didn't like the size, the side buttons or the extra side buttons on the outside of the Viper, or if you're just a fan of the Death Adder in general, at $69.99, this is an easy W. I'm sure there will be some people that wanted to see this come in even lighter now that we have some other lightweight ergo options out there, but the 82-gram weight is going to be a good balance of speed and stability for most people. Also just launched for a retail of $79.99 is the Basilisk V2. This is a shape that until today has been exclusive to their wireless models, the Dialback X Hyperspeed and the Ultimate with all the bells and whistles. So the V2 is essentially the full-featured setup of the Ultimate, but minus the wireless obviously, and coming in at a much more affordable price point. I'll link the review for the Ultimate up in the corner if you want to take a look, because it'll be a little more in-depth. And you can save those keystrokes in the comments section, because we all know that this is Razer's take on the G502. We do see a weight reduction here, the wireless version being right around 109 grams on my scale and cutting down to 92 grams on the V2. The original wired version of this mouse came in at 102 grams, and the X Hyperspeed wireless came in at 83 before battery. So depending on what battery or battery mod you went with, this may actually be the lightest iteration of this mouse, coming in just a few grams lighter even than the V1 Essential version. This is an upgrade from the original Basilisk in a number of ways. Overall shape with the elongated triggers, weight, and improved side grips that are less grippy but also much easier to keep clean. It also gets the full modern Razer treatment with the Focus Plus sensor tech, the optical switches, the SpeedFlex cable, and the PTFE glides, which are really balanced. The only thing that sets it apart from the Basilisk Ultimate, aside from the wireless aspect obviously, is that they've refreshed the coating to the new sweat-resistant matte that they shipped on the new Death Adder. This does not fingerprint or show oil like the Ultimate does, which makes me a little sad inside. To be honest, this new round of coating is my favorite mouse coating I've seen yet from any manufacturer. Razer's been playing around with the coating for the past few releases, and I think they've really cracked the code with this one. The only deletion we see from the Ultimate are the RGB strips down the sides of the body, which they did presumably to cut weight. Anybody concerned about performance is probably not concerned about this. Outside of that, they've retained a few features that I really like about the Basilisk platform. Tilt scroll, the detachable sniper button, which you can use for anything if you don't use DPI clutching. You also get scroll wheel resistance adjustment. I cranked this all the way down to 0, and it won't free spin, but it pulls every bit of tactility and, more importantly, noise out of the scroll. I use my Basilisk daily as an editing and productivity mouse, mostly because it's amazingly flexible in terms of button assignments and application. I think the G502 only beats it in terms of giving you access to the 2 buttons that run along the edge of mouse 1. It's adaptable to a lot of different genres of games, and the only reason I don't play with it personally is because I pretty much only play FPS these days, and I've become accustomed to lightweight mice. That's not to say you can't use the Basilisk V2 for that. It's surprisingly agile at 92 grams. The only warning I would give here is that due to the thumb rest, the body is narrower than it appears in pictures and even the stated measurements. If you've got a wide hand, like mine is 10.5 centimeters wide, there may be a better choice for you ergonomically. This obviously doesn't bother me as much in editing and productivity stuff where I have a more relaxed grip, but during gaming sometimes I'll tense up without realizing it, and after a while I start to feel that. Flexibility is really the main attraction here, and this is an easy recommend if the Basilisk Ultimate has your attention but you just can't justify that spend. So here we go again. Razer, can you please do me a favor and make something bad so I can absolutely light it up in a review? I know how this looks, but Razer's victory lap seemingly continues into the top of 2020. The Basilisk V2 is a solid and welcome update to that platform, and the Death Adder feels great here. Again, those stuck on weight will likely wish for a sub 70 gram version, but it's important to remember that the wired Viper is 69 grams and much smaller, and the Viper Ultimate is 74 grams. That's just 8 grams lighter, and it's my main, so it was not a stretch to do work with this mouse at all. As always, links to everything we talked about down in the description. Any questions, hit me in the comments or drop by the Discord. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, hit that sub button, and until next time, stay up.